Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look at the hidden machinery of the city. We walk past towering skyscrapers and bustling apartment complexes every single day, but we rarely stop to think about the complex, high-stakes systems that keep them running. In This Explainer, we're diving into some high-quality, realistic, documentary-like lessons on property management, pulling directly from the official District of Columbia Property Management Study Guide. We're going to uncover exactly how these massive concrete giants actually survive.
So what literally keeps a city from just falling apart? Well, it's not just the steel, the concrete, or the glass. It's the property manager. They're basically the central nervous system of these multi-million-dollar machines. They are constantly, and I mean constantly, fighting against physical decay, financial ruin, and legal pitfalls to keep our urban environments alive.
To truly understand this high-stakes profession, we're going to break it down into 4 key pillars. 1, the master plan. 2, following the money. 3, maintaining the machine. And 4, navigating DC law. All right, let's jump right in.
Pillar number 1, the master plan.
Look, before a single rent check even gets collected, a manager has to have a strategic vision. A building isn't just a static object you build and forget about, right? It's practically alive. And the ultimate villain in this story is time. Property managers actually classify the threats of time and decay into 3 categories of obsolescence. First, you have physical obsolescence. That's your standard wear and tear, like a leaking roof or peeling paint. Second is functional obsolescence. Think outdated designs or systems, like old single-pane windows that just bleed energy. And third, economic obsolescence, which is all about outside market forces, like a major local employer shutting down and tanking the local demand.
There's this quote from the guide that really hits the nail on the head. Properties begin to deteriorate as soon as they are completed. Crazy to think about, right? This is exactly why having a proactive, long-term management plan is absolutely vital for a building's survival. You are in a relentless, everyday battle against depreciation.
Moving on to pillar number 2, following the money.
When we treat the complex accounting system like the absolute lifeblood of the building, it really all boils down to one single metric: net operating income, or NOI for short. It's simply the money remaining after operating expenses are subtracted from effective gross income. Why is this so crucial? Because if this number dips into the negative, yikes, the building is bleeding. It means the expenses exceed the income and the owner is forced to inject their own personal cash just to keep the lights on. NOI is literally the ultimate survival metric.
Now, when measuring operational efficiency, the assumptions can totally surprise you. We've got a fascinating case study comparing 2 buildings. Building A is 75,000 square feet, and Building B has a massive 200,000 square feet. Instinctively, you'd probably think the bigger building costs way more to run per square foot, right? But run the numbers. Building B operates at $4.28 per square foot, while the smaller Building A costs $4.80. So a larger building, when managed correctly, can actually operate a lot more efficiently than a smaller one.
And here's the kicker. That efficiency directly ties into a building's total valuation. That brings us to the capitalization rate, or cap rate. This is a market-determined percentage used to calculate an investment's value. You take that NOI we just talked about, and you divide it by the cap rate. Because of how the math shakes up, tiny, almost invisible changes in this percentage will drastically alter a property's multi-million-dollar valuation.
Let's put this into perspective with a specific dossier. Imagine we have a shopping center with an effective gross income of $4.25 million. We subtract the operating expenses, which leaves us with a net operating income of $1,975,000. When we take that and divide it by an 8% cap rate, boom, it turns into a massive $24.6 million valuation.
And this right here is where a great property manager literally becomes a superhero for the owner. Imagine saving just $825 a month in operational expenses. Maybe a tweak in HVAC schedule or renegotiate a trash removal contract. Doing that mathematically creates an additional $100,000 in wealth for the owner, assuming a 10% cap rate. Finding those minor efficiencies quite literally prints money.
Okay, let's shift gears to pillar 3, maintaining the machine.
This is where all that high-level financial theory meets actual steel, concrete, and elbow grease. Maintenance basically breaks down into 4 distinct categories: preventive, curative, deferred, and routine. The absolute best property managers live and breathe preventive maintenance. They're routinely inspecting equipment to avert disaster before it happens. If you aren't preventive, you inevitably fall into the deferred or curative traps.
Curative maintenance means fixing something after it's already broken, which usually means incredibly costly emergency repairs and, for sure, extremely unhappy tenants.
A huge part of that preventative maintenance is optimizing energy efficiency, which is actually heavily regulated by the government. Take the number 13, for example. Since 2005, the federal government has mandated that all residential HVAC systems must have a minimum SEER rating, that's a measure of energy efficiency, of at least 13. It grounds this abstract concept of utility management in hard, fast data. You have to buy efficient equipment by law.
And man, does this efficiency matter immensely on the balance sheet. Calculating the payback period is an everyday task. Let's say a manager invests $1,500 in new energy-saving lighting bulbs and ballasts, and they project a savings of $500 a year on the electricity bill. Well, it completely pays for itself in exactly 3 years. After that 3-year mark, that $500 a year drops right into the NOI. It turns facilities management directly into a profit center. Having deep operational knowledge also uncovers some really surprising trade secrets. For example, water utilities typically charge you for both the water coming into the property and the water discharging out into the sewer. But if you install an irrigation system, that water goes right into the ground, not the sewer. By utilizing this strategy, managers can legally bypass sewer discharge fees for their landscaping, saving massive utility costs over the long run. Brilliant, right?
Finally, we arrive at our fourth pillar, navigating DC law.
Now, failing to follow the specific rules in the District of Columbia can quite literally get a building shut down completely. Property managers are heavily regulated, and DC dictates strict, non-negotiable timelines for landlords. Just consider the heating timeline based on local housing codes. March 1st to September 1st is the mandatory furnace inspection window where reports have to be submitted. Heat in the building must be turned on and capable of hitting specific temperatures by October 15th, and landlords cannot legally turn the heat off until May 15th. Miss any of these dates and you are in violation of the law.
The law even micromanages the absolute smallest operational details. 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the exact legal minimum temperature DC law requires a residential building's hot water facility to be capable of reaching for normal demands. It is incredibly precise.
Beyond the physical operations, managers have to navigate a complex web of financial regulations. The DC Rent Control Act literally dictates the exact revenue ceiling of a building. For non-exempt buildings, most allowable rent increases are capped at the Consumer Price Index plus 2%, maxing out at 10%. But for elderly or disabled tenants, it's just the CPI, capped at 5%. However, if the building was built after 1975, it's generally exempt from these limits altogether. A manager must know these laws inside and out, or it's game over.
So what does this all mean for us? Next time you walk into a towering high-rise, ask yourself, who is really pulling the strings? Behind that beautiful marble lobby and the humming elevators is a property manager fighting a continuous, exhausting war against physical decay, balancing incredibly tight million-dollar budgets and navigating an intense maze of local laws. It's a fascinating, hidden world that literally keeps our cities standing. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope it completely changes the way you look at the buildings around you.